So today we're going to be talking about high yield savings accounts from online banks. Now this is going to actually be able to help you earn more money on your money while it's sitting there for like emergencies or other things that you're going to be saving up for. Now if you already have some online bank accounts, definitely stick around because we're going to be looking at some that have some really awesome interest rates, including one that's at 4%. And if you've actually never had an online bank, definitely stick around to the end because we're going to talk about a few little things here that can help you understand online banks a little bit better, so that way you don't go into it not knowing some of these things. And I think that can really help you out, so that way you don't accidentally start going into online banking without knowing some of these things. Hello fellow wealth builders, and welcome back to the True Financials channel. As I mentioned, we're going to be talking about high yield online savings accounts. But first, if by chance you are new here and this is your first video with us, my name is Dennis and I love talking about personal finance to really help you build your wealth and become more financially free. And I want to take you on this journey of financial independence, so make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and the bell to get notifications when new videos come up. So one thing to consider as well, as of this recording, these are the current rates that you're going to see here that we're going to bring up on the screen. So now of course these rates can change, hopefully for the better, but of course they can also be going down. So if you go and check these websites that I'll have linked in the show notes down below, some of them might actually have changed as well. So hopefully again that they go up for you, but of course they can also be going down. And I might even make additional videos for this down the road if this seems to be a video that people want to get more information about, so that way you can see some of the different banks that are out there that actually have some really good interest rates for you. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually transition onto the desktop here, and the first one you're gonna see here is actually Capital One 360. Now, the actual savings account that Capital One 360 has is actually one of the lowest ones that we're gonna be talking about here today. So their actual regular savings account is at a 1% APY. Now, if you're actually familiar with the channel, I do actually personally have a Capital One checking and savings account. I can link that video up here in the cards. You can check out after this video is done. It's like a pros and cons when it comes to Capital One 360. I absolutely love them personally myself, but again, they of course have some cons when it comes to their services. But one thing to also keep in mind is Capital One does also have a money market account, which is a little bit different, and they do have a 2% APY. Now, there is a stipulation on this one to be able to get that 2%. As you can see down here, it says you had to have a balance of $10,000 or more. Now, of course, not everybody's going to have that amount of money to put in there, but if you have an emergency fund that's fully funded and you want to keep your money safe and have some decent amount of earnings from it, that is going to be one way to actually start earning some good money on your money, so that way it's not just sitting around and losing it. Because if you're not actually earning any money from your money that's just sitting in an account, you're actually going to be losing it, because of course the cost of everything goes up over time as inflation keeps rising. So if you can at least kind of cut inflation by a little bit there, you're going to help yourself in the future. Because if you have $10,000 for 10 years not earning you anything, as great as it is to have that as an emergency fund, you're still going to actually have less value over that 10 years. Now, again, as I mentioned, Capital One is what I currently use. I have just the regular savings account. I don't have the money market, but I do absolutely love it. Next up is actually going to be another bank that I actually really like as well, and this is going to be Ally Bank. Now, Ally Bank is going to be another great online service where they mainly just focus on giving you some high interest savings. So it looks like the APY is cut off. So I'm going to actually transition really quick down to the bottom here. So we have 2% interest on this as well. So again, 2%, but this one actually doesn't have the caveat of having that $10,000 like the Capital One money market does. So making sure that you pay attention to some of those requirements when it comes to being able to earn that money, that is going to be a very big thing. So that one is 2% on all balance tiers, which is really, really cool. So next up, this one might not be something you might have heard of before, but we actually have Discover. Discover actually has a bank as well, which is really cool. So a lot of people look at Discover and think that it's just a credit card company, but they actually do have a banking service, and they actually do have a 2% earnings. Now it's a little harder to see on this page. I had to scroll down just a little bit to be able to see the 2% right over here on the actual online savings. So that's a really cool thing to consider. If you already have a credit card with Discover and you want to just kind of keep a lot of things more in-house, this is a great option to go with. But yeah, 2% APY is definitely a lot better than we've seen in years past, because after the 2008 crash, a lot of the interest rates started dropping dramatically. So it's really nice to see these things starting to come back up. Now, another thing to keep in mind, these are all online banks, because a lot of the traditional banks like Chase or Bank of America or Wells Fargo tend to have really low interest rates. You can even see here in the comparison chart that Chase, Citibank, and Bank of America have 0.01% on your money. So like you're earning nothing, like absolutely nothing on your money. For that, Citibank is 0.06 and the Bank of America is 0.03. Like, you're not earning anything. So 2%, you're definitely getting a lot more money on your money for having it just sit there if it's an emergency fund or if it's some type of sinking fund for future purchases as well. So next up is going to be Marcus by Goldman Sachs. Now, this one actually has a little bit of a higher interest rate. So this one starts at 2.05%. Now, of course, as I mentioned, just like before, sometimes they are going to have some caveats on being able to get that certain rate. So always make sure that you're hitting like the read more or more details in case there's certain things. Now, some banks will have it where that APY is like a promotional time where it's like only for a certain amount of time and then it goes away. Some of them are, you had to hit those minimums to be able to get that amount. So just make sure you're going through those and not getting kind of ripped off thinking that you're going to get the most for everything, but then you end up getting less because maybe you didn't read it all the way through. So make sure you pay attention to that, so that way if you're wanting the higher interest savings, that you're going to get that for the full term of however long you're going to keep that money in the account. So next up here is going to be HSBC. Now this one also has, very similar to that Goldman Sachs, is 2.05 APY. Now I personally never used the Goldman Sachs or the HSBC accounts, but I just looked them up while I was going through the research on these online high yield savings accounts. So make sure you're doing additional research when it comes to wanting to open your account with these companies. Maybe do some research on the reviews, make sure that you're understanding what the minimums for the balances are, and we're going to get a little bit more into that towards the end, as I mentioned. So stick around to be able to learn a little bit more about paying attention to online banks versus more physical banks that people are typically used to. So next up, very similar to Discover, is actually American Express. So just like Discover, American Express also does have a savings account. So it might be a little bit of a shocker to some people that these companies are actually starting to open up, accounts for people to be able to put their money into, and not just for credit cards. Now, if you look right over here, American Express has actually a 2.10% APY. So that's actually quite a bit higher than the Capital One, of course, at that 1%, and then just a tiny bit higher than the Discover and some of the other Ally Bank and other ones that we just talked about as well. As you, of course, might have noticed, we're actually going up in APY as we go along in this video. So we're going to be consistently going higher and higher with some of these APYs. Now, again, keep in mind some of the different things that might take into effect when it comes to actually opening up these accounts. So look into those details so that way you are getting the best value for the money that you're putting into these accounts. And then really quick, before we continue on, let me know in the comments down below, do you have an online bank with any of these banks, or a bank that maybe I don't talk about today? I really want to hear from you in the community. Do you like that online bank? Are you happy with their services? And then do you also have a traditional bank on top of this online bank, or do you just do the online now? I'm really curious to see how we're transitioning as a society in general. I know a lot of people that I've been talking to recently kind of started shifting towards the online portion only, not really even worrying about a physical bank anymore. So I definitely want to hear from you in the comments down below. All right, so now let's go ahead and hop back here onto the computer. So the next bank that we're looking at is called Synchrony Bank. Now, Synchrony Bank, as you can see at the top right there, has a huge interest rate that you can start earning on your money at 2.20%. So on there, it says that there are no minimum balances. So that is awesome to be able to earn a lot more money on your money when it's just sitting there in your account, even if you have $5, even if you have $1,000, or any other amount of money, so that way you can start earning more on it. Now, again, just like a lot of the other banks, here they're actually kind of showing you, what the averages are and how much you'd be earning on that money. So for example, right here, you have $5,000 deposited for a total of 12 months. It would show you how much you'd have at the end of the year. So with Synchrony Bank at that 2.20%, if you didn't add anything or take anything away, you would have $5,110. And then if you compare that to like Bank of America, you would have $5,003, Wells Fargo $5,005, and so on. So it kind of shows you that these online banks with these higher yield savings can actually earn you a lot more interest on your money, so you can actually be gaining something instead of essentially losing money at that point. So this one actually has some really good rates. I haven't actually opened up an account with them yet, but I am interested in doing so just to kind of test things out. Maybe do a video for you here on the channel if you're interested, just so that way we can kind of get an idea of what some of these other online banks are offering and how their services work in comparison to something such as Capital One that I've already been using for years and years. So next up on this list over here is Barclays. Now, they they also do have a 2.2 APY when it comes to their online savings accounts. So again, very similar to the Synchrony Bank, where their interest rate is much higher than obviously the Capital One and a lot of the other banks that we've been talking about. But again, keep in mind, make sure that you go through and read the reviews and the comments of other people and their experiences with these banks. This one, again, I haven't really personally used or even talked about a lot before, but this is something that I've, just kind of looked up when I was doing the research for this video, I should say, and just kind of getting an idea of the different companies and what they actually offer for us. All right, so the next bank up is actually going to be the one with the highest interest that is available for pretty much everybody at that full rate. Now, I actually have one more on top of that that's actually going to have that 4% interest rate, but there are some catches to it, so we're going to leave that one for last. But the last one is going to be actually PNC Bank. Now, as you can see on the screen here, the PNC Bank actually has a 2.35 APY, which is pretty much the highest one that I found while doing this research. Now, I actually saw a video from Grant Stephan. If you've actually watched his video about this stuff, I was really excited when he made the video too, because I love talking about high yield savings accounts. So he actually talked about how this one, when he was doing the review for this, he was actually looking at people talking about how the savings rate was great, but everything on aside from that was terrible with this online bank. So whether it was like the checking or any other services that they offered. So he was talking about how if you just actually leave this money in just the savings account, that you might be great going with this company and getting that high yield savings, but as far as everything else with the service, it might not be the best. But again, do your research when it comes to looking at these companies, seeing what they offer and what they can give you, and if it's worth maybe just having a savings account at 2.35% versus the 2.2, the 2.05, the 2%, or even the 1% when it comes to the bank that you choose to go with, if you're interested in any one or all of these types of banks. So as I mentioned, I actually have one more bank that has an even higher APY than PNC Bank, and that's actually going to be with T-Mobile. So I'm actually personally a T-Mobile customer myself, so I've heard about this when they first announced it. I haven't actually gone through and opened the account just yet, because there are definitely some caveats to being able to get this high interest savings, which right down here you can see is actually going to be at 4%. So you can actually earn 4% on your money if you are a T-Mobile customer. Now, obviously this gives some limitations on who can actually get this money and this rate, but of course, if you are a T-Mobile customer, this is a really cool thing on this. But again, there are some caveats to this one, because you do actually have to be putting in a certain amount of money every single month to be actually consistently getting that amount, and then it actually only caps out at $3,000, which if you have like a starter emergency fund, or you're trying to save up for something like a trip or Christmas, that's actually gonna be a really cool thing, because we talked about it on this channel, where if you're having certain sinking funds or goals you want to save for, and you're putting a little bit of money every single month away for it, maybe this might be a great account if you have T-Mobile to be able to put that money in and then get that 4% earnings, so that way you actually make some money on your money, which is always a really, really cool thing. All right, so as I mentioned, if you stuck around here to the end, we're going to be talking about a couple different things when it comes to actually online banks and some of the things that you want to keep in mind for that. So if you've never had an online bank, one of the biggest things, of course, is the whole thing of not having a physical location to go to. Now, from my personal experience, that's not something that I actually miss about going to an actual bank. I know a lot of people talk about, well, how do you pull money out or how do you put money in? Some banks will actually allow you, of course, to go to any ATM, usually for free. But again, make sure you go through and read the stipulations on some of those. I know like Capital One allows me to go to so many different types of ATMs around my area to be able to pull money out if needed. And then there are certain ATMs that you can actually even deposit money into for your online bank account. So those are going to be, of course, like the biggest things when it comes to that. A lot of these online banks also do offer, check deposits on your mobile phone, so you don't even have to worry about that. And a lot of them have some really great customer service. From my experience, Capital One has been a great online customer service, so I've never had issues that they didn't resolve in a very short amount of time. So I like them in that regard. But some of the other things to keep in mind as well too, when it comes to online banks, is the transfer time between a regular bank and the online bank can take a little bit of time. So if you're transferring from like a Chase Bank over to your online account, that can actually take a day or so to actually do the full transfer, unless you're doing like direct deposit from your work to be able to actually go into those online accounts. So sometimes it could take a little bit of time to get that money available for you on those accounts. So one of the other big things when it comes to online banks is a lot of times they actually have very little to no fees when it comes to their checking and their savings accounts, which is one of my favorite things about this, on top of the earnings when it comes to your interest that you actually get, is actually, not having those fees. So not having like crazy overdraft fees like a lot of those other banks do, or not having minimums that you have to meet. A lot of these online banks have it a lot easier, and I feel that it's a really great thing for a lot of consumers to not have to deal with all these crazy fees, to be able to keep these businesses running. So that's my personal favorite thing, because I hate the idea of spending money on my money because I didn't have enough in the account or spent enough that the bank required me to be able to do. So that's what I love about online banks. And then one of the other big things that a lot of people kind of tend to forget about, because of these high yield savings accounts, and this is a really critical one, is that you actually do have to pay taxes on the interest that you earn from this money. Just like anything else, unfortunately, the government does tax you on this stuff. So keep that in mind if you decide to open an online savings account. I don't think a lot of people talk about that, but you do have to pay taxes on this stuff. So if you ended up earning $100 in the year in interest in one of your savings accounts, you are going to have to pay taxes. They do provide you the tax files for it, usually by I think the latest is usually February. Don't quote me on that, of course, but every bank's going to be different. You want to make sure that you keep that information and provide it with your tax information when it comes time to file your taxes. But that's, of course, just one little thing on top of all the great benefits when it comes to having a high yield online savings account, being able to have minimum fees, and being able to actually earn some money on your money, so that way it's not depleting in value over time as it's sitting there, maybe just protecting you for emergency funds or saving for your future. Right, if you got value out of this video, don't forget to hit that like button down below, and then I have 2 videos here for you if you'd like to continue learning. The top one is going to be my most recent release, and then this video down here is going to be that Capital One 360 review that I was mentioning earlier in this video.